Chancellor Rishi Sunak today pushing ahead with plans to ditch the massively unpopular 0.7% foreign aid target in a spending review that has seen him ignore those grandees who've been bleating on, the champagne socialists bleating on about how he must keep giving so much away in foreign aid. I'm going to bring you all the very latest in this report, guys, but please start off by making sure you subscribed and hit the bell so you don't miss future reports here on the West Monster channel. Now, some pretty grim numbers in this spending review. First of all, Rishi Sunak telling MPs that unemployment will rise to 2.6 million by the second quarter of 2021, saying that the government is set to borrow 394 billion quid this year. And Sunak also telling MPs the economy is predicted to contract by 11.3% and grow by 5.5% next year and 6.6% in 2022. And also announcing a 4 billion quid levelling up fund for regional infrastructure. Now, with the dire economic situation, it's amazing, isn't it, that you've got so many MPs and the great and the good campaigning to give so much of British taxpayers' money away in foreign aid. And I'm going to bring you in a minute some speculation that Conservative MPs, never mind other MPs, Conservative MPs may try and block this from Rishi Sunak. But as he laid out today, the Chancellor, he said the spending review will strengthen the UK's place in the world, but sticking rigidly to the 0.7% target, the overseas budget commitment, is difficult to justify to the British public. I think that's somewhat of an understatement there from the Chancellor, who said that he's listened with great respect to those who disagree, but at a time of unprecedented crisis, government must make tough choices. And he confirmed that the budget would be cut to 0.5%, still around 10 billion, let's not forget, from 0.7%, and saying that it would return when the fiscal situation allows. Well, frankly, I don't see how you could possibly justify hiking the foreign aid budget back up. But he did say that it would still mean, even what his proposed cut would mean the UK will remain the second highest overseas aid contributor in the G7. So I know some are going to get their knickers in the twist, very keen to give away as much British taxpayers' money as possible, but that does put it into context. We'll still be giving, it looks like, around 10 billion away, but there will be a cut. I did point out on Twitter that those campaigning against cuts to foreign aid totally out of touch with the public mood. Polls consistently show 60% plus of Brits want the budget slashed. Now, there was a poll done the 2nd of November by YouGov that showed around 60% think we spend too much on foreign aid. That's Brits overall, and including 80% of Conservative voters. There was another one here, this is from a few years ago, but this actually shows you on international comparisons. Brits want foreign aid cut more than those that others surveyed in that YouGov poll. 66% wanting it cut. So, you know, it's all well and good for the great and the good and the Guardian, the BBC, whatever, to go on whinging about this. They are totally out of touch with the public mood, especially when we look at some of those dire economic forecasts, those figures from the Chancellor as well. As Nigel Farage praised Rishi Sunak today, saying, at last, we have a Conservative Chancellor that understands Conservative voters on foreign aid. Now, the Mail, interestingly, they had done a story on this before, and saying that the foreign aid budget is to be slashed by 4 billion a year, which you've seen that will announce today. But interestingly enough, what they said was that rather than making it a one-off cut, ministers will introduce legislation to allow spending to be kept at a reduced level for several years, or even permanently. Now look at this. Telegraph, Parliament ready to resist Rishi Sunak's bid to cut foreign aid. Senior Tories, this is Conservative MPs now, have warned that the government would have serious problems forcing through the 4 billion quid reduction to the budget. Rishi Sunak's bid to cut foreign aid could be thwarted in Parliament as it emerged that legislation may be required to enable the £4 billion reduction to go ahead. Now, Telegraph reporting that Whitehall sources have confirmed that the Treasury has asked lawyers to assess whether legislation may now be required in order to prevent the cut being judicially reviewed. And the Telegraph understands that the Chancellor has also privately conceded that MPs may have to be given a vote. Now, you may think, well, Boris Johnson's got a big Conservative majority there. Surely they'll back the Chancellor, especially given the economic situation we find ourselves in. Surely they'll back Boris and Rishi Sunak on cutting foreign aid. But speaking to the Telegraph on Tuesday night, Damien Green, Conservative MP and chairman of the One Nation caucus of MPs, said that dozens of Conservative MPs could defy the whip if the cut was put to a vote. Damien Green quoted as saying, if the government tries to pass a law effectively repealing the current obligations on aid, they will have severe problems getting it through the House of Commons. Goes on to say there is unease, a lot of unease across the Conservative Party about breaking manifesto commitments. I know dozens of my colleagues will be wary of supporting that. Well, look, the polling shows a clear majority of Brits want the foreign aid budget cut. 80%, around 80% of Conservative voters want it cut. But Andrew Mitchell also quoted, a former International Development Secretary, also quoted in the Telegraph as saying, many of us are very sympathetic to the Chancellor and want to give him strong support, but the 0.7% target, he says, is a promise to the poorest in the world, quite apart from being a manifesto commitment at the last election. At a time when we're about to assume the chair of the G7, it doesn't make sense to trash our own reputation. So here you are, clear evidence here of a number of Conservative MPs going against, potentially, a Conservative Chancellor wanting to reduce the ridiculous, let's not forget, last year I think it was 15 billion quid we gave away, foreign aid budget. And here we have a second report, Financial Times, Tory MPs threaten rebellion over Sunak plan to cut UK aid. Chancellor expected to use spending review to reduce funding for overseas development. And according to the FT, colleagues are very angry, said one MP, while another claimed Boris Johnson's 80-seat House of Commons majority could be threatened. If they do it, the gloves will come off, said a former minister. And just to remind you in all of this, Britain is the only G7 country as it stands to spend 0.7% on overseas aid. In France in 2019 it was 0.44%, Canada 0.27%, and the US 0.16%. So look, I think this is long overdue, and I know the Tony Blairs and the David Camerons and whoever else are going to be whinging about this, but it's absolutely necessary. I don't think it should ever be raised again. It shouldn't be raised back to the previous ridiculous level. And I certainly do not think that Conservative voters are going to be very impressed by MPs on Boris Johnson's side, Boris Johnson's party, campaigning against and voting against potentially a cut in foreign aid. But guys, as ever, let me know what you think in the comments below about all of this. And if you appreciate this report, if you found it helpful and informative, do please, as ever, give this video a big thumbs up. And of course, you can support my work by hitting the join button below to become a supporter. And of course, as ever, thank you so much for watching.